beautiful morning on the edge of spring on a bright and sunny day in the heart of Point Reyes. This is the kind of day you want to drop whatever you're doing, run outside and feel the rush of new life fill your senses. We're here with Loretta Farley, field ranger for Point Reyes National Seashore. We're sitting in a woodpile. We're sitting in a woodpile with frogs and lizards and all kinds of little critters around us in this beautiful meadow just outside the park's Bear Valley Visitor Center. We're here with Loretta to talk about Kuliloklo, the Coast Miwok village that Loretta and others worked so hard to recreate using authentic processes that honored its cultural heritage. Loretta is a longtime ranger for the park and an interpreter of the Coast Miwok culture. She's spent more than 30 years helping people appreciate the many reasons this park is a national treasure. Loretta, hello and welcome.
Thank you so much for sharing your sound stories with us, Gina. We're very happy to have you here with us at Point Reyes.
Thank you. Loretta, can you tell us a little bit about Kuliloklo Village, why the park created it, and how that was done?
Well, in 1976, which of course was the bicentennial of the United States, the National Park Service and many federal agencies were interested in projects that were relating to the history of the country. So here at Point Reyes, that was expressed by the creation of a replica of a Miwok village, the first people of Marin County, the first people of Point Reyes National Seashore. It was a combined effort of the National Park Service, many volunteers, and a nonprofit group called the Miwok Archaeological Preserve of Marin. And that nonprofit had formed around recently discovered archaeological sites in Marin County, and they were working to protect those. And they partnered with the National Park Service in the creation of the Coast Miwok exhibit, or Kuliloklo, which means Bear Valley in the local language here. No bears, though.
Not anymore.
I haven't seen a bear here in a while. So that was the inception, and one of the really wonderful things that came out of this partnership between the Park Service and the Miwok Archaeological Preserve, MAPOM, was Native people who lived in the area saw this project rising in the National Seashore, and they came forward to assist the National Park Service with what we were doing. And these were families of Coast Miwok descendants who had lived in the areas. Many of them had worked at local ranches, were living along Highway 1, and they came to the park saying, well, let's see what's going on here. Some of them also college professors at Sonoma State related to Bodega Miwok families. Miwok families there helped create the fishing industry, especially the Smith family. So they came to the park, and along with the rangers, the staff, and the volunteers, have been visiting Kuliloklo, working on Kuliloklo, and sharing their culture with us. We've been very fortunate to have rangers from the Coast Miwok and Kashaya-Pomo tribes working here at the seashore who've also shared information and their culture with the staff here.
I understand that when you actually built Kuliloklo, you used Native American implements like abalone shells and did it in a very honoring way.
Yes, the original construction methods back in the 1970s, 1976, there was a real desire to teach children, teach adults skills, native skills, and that in fact is something that the MAPOM group also does, is hold classes at Kuliloklo in skills. There was a great desire to preserve those traditions, and so the original construction did include methods of digging, and that was using digging sticks as well as abalone shells to remove soil, and the soil was piled into baskets and carried away. Obsidian blades were used for cutting fiber materials like tule and willow that were used in the construction. We did cheat a little bit. Some of the larger redwood bark things did require saws and chainsaws, but every attempt was made to continue the use of traditional materials and traditional skills and tools.
Well, I think that might have contributed, too, to the wonderful feeling that Kuliloklo has. It feels like a spiritual place. I love going there. I love the sweat lodge, and it was raining, and the rain was coming in through the little hole in the sod roof, and I just thought this is a wonderful way to experience another culture, just settling down into a place where they might have had a very similar experience. And my next question to you would be the really good reason to come out and experience Kuliloklo, and I think I just answered it myself.
Kuliloklo really operates on many, many different levels for many, many people, and it's really infused with the spirit of all the ceremonies and the songs and the prayers that have been offered in the space, as well as the excitement and energy of all the school children that come here every year and really enjoy visiting and seeing, sort of a window into the past. So I think when you talk about the spiritual aspect, you're really sensing some of that. It is, like I say, infused with spirit and songs and prayers. It appears to many people very similar to the landscape that would have been here, say, around the 1700s, just before European contact. And does operate as an educational tool. Thousands of school children literally every year visiting here as part of their schoolwork curriculum. And then every month, different families join together at Kuliloklo to offer songs and prayers in the roundhouse to celebrate their survival through so many changes in California history. This time of year, as you're speaking of the spring, for example, is when Kashaya people, they welcome that the earth is green and renewing itself. The tiny native coastal strawberries appearing on hillsides. Coast Miwok people's tradition was the first coming of the red made seeds, the little tiny pink and white flower that is in the fields around Kuliloklo. And so both groups come here and say, oh, thank goodness the winter is over. Let's stretch out and enjoy some sunshine. So let's begin our movement out of the valleys. Let's head out to the seacoast to begin harvesting the shellfish. There's really a lot of ancient traditions in the area. There's a lot of spiritual feelings in the area as well.
Go get the flowers and the fish and the shellfish and whatever else we need to do, because this is a beautiful,
Right.
beautiful time of year.
So it is. It's really a culture that is in tune very much with seasonal changes. So as the days grew longer and the sun warms our bones up a little bit, it's a reminder that it's time to literally head out to the seashore, begin to experience the sort of the fresh air, fresh foods. If you were living in California in the 1700s, the winter was kind of a dry time. You were eating a lot of dried plant material or acorn flour, very nutritious, but very one-dimensional food. So the spring was also a time when there was going to be basically salad and fruit and fish and all these wonderful foods to nurture yourself. You were going to be traveling a little bit more after sort of hunkering down for the winter. There's a little traveling, visiting new landscapes. So, and I think people continue to feel that wherever you live, whatever structure or however your life is organized, the spring, I think, is always a time when people feel hopeful and the darkness of winter is gone and the spring is here and the earth is happy and renewing herself again.
Yeah, as you speak, there are about a dozen little lizards that are like putting their heads up and down and running around going, yeah.
Yes,
Everybody's happy.
exactly. Right. The air temperature is just right for lizards and snakes to come out.
And for you and me.
There you go.
You've taught about Marin's first people, Loretta, about their relationship with the earth, people who once stood in this flower field in spring, right where we stand now. I'm wondering if there's a time that comes to mind when you thought to yourself, this is what it's all about. This is why I love what I do. Can you share that story with us?
Well, I think for me, when I look at a place like Kuliloklo or working for the Park Service, it does express, for me, I feel very, very fortunate as the daughter of second-generation immigrants, people who have lived in California for many years, to be preserving these stories, making sure that they're heard. It's not just writing them down in a book and tucking them away in a library, but making sure stories get heard, that people see, that get a visual experience of the landscape of their home. Every time you look at any culture, we're all very different, but basically we're the same. We all want the same things. We want to have food to eat, a shelter. We want our children to be safe, to grow up healthy. And how a culture does that, I find fascinating. Most human cultures look around their environment, their habitat. They say, well, what is here? How can we use that environment to create the same things that people want? Shelter, food, security in some ways, and how each culture expresses that. Kuliloklo for me also is a place where Native people who have been submerged in a dominant culture have been able to really come forward and say, this is a place for us, let us gather here. As we live in the culture around us, yet let us move together come together to share the stories and songs to keep them alive. So that it has a special place. I feel very honored as a caretaker of that place and as a representative of the federal government that we can have this space here for people to come to express themselves in that way. In terms of being a ranger or my profession, it's always been about the story, hearing stories from my ancestors, being a native here to this area. The soil that nurtures me, the water that nurtures me, the air is the same as the first people. So I feel that this sort of nativeness of place, and I want people to feel that too. Every place has many, many stories. It has the story of the animals, the story of the human animals, the story of the plants, and that's a great thing about the Park Service is what we're trying to do as we are in an area is look around and say, well, what are the stories here? Make sure that they're preserved in as many ways as possible, and most importantly that they are told. They don't just literally end up on a shelf, dusty shelf. They are living and being passed on and moving through the culture and moving around the world.
Well, you certainly helped me tell a coyote story, Loretta. You were wonderful. Coyote story is really one of the many stories, as you say, that are in this this beautiful stretch of land and history and the shared culture and the larger community of people and animals and plants and all of us together.
Well, a tradition in Northern California, in the Northern California Native community also, if you appreciate the words that a speaker has been saying or a song that has been sung, you always say, ho! So, Gina, ho!
Thank you. Thank you, Loretta. One last thing here. If there's one thing that listeners can learn from these first people, something we could do to maybe make our own hectic modern life more in balance, share that with us.
I think one of the most important things is just to slow down. If you are sort of resting during the winter time and taking appropriate time to rest your body so that you're ready when the spring comes. There's a lot more activity in the spring in traditional culture. So learning to rest, to slow down, to look around you, to not say I am separate from Coyote, but Coyote is in fact my brother, my sister. How can I fit myself into the landscape as opposed to how can I alter or change the landscape to fit myself? I think that's a real challenge for the human species in general as we like to change things around us. And hopefully we can think about, well, how can we fit in? And that is really something that I've seen in traditional cultures, native cultures. They were fitting into a landscape. They were saying, what is here and how can we be in balance with that? And instead of saying, well, I'm here and I'm going to alter everything around me. So slowing down, looking around, being aware of your environment, being aware of your habitat, and seeing how you can fit in and not harm it, how you can fit in and be a part of it.
Thank you, Loretta. Those are very wise words, and they certainly dovetail into the way that I conclude all of these conversations, which is discover your place among the wild things.
Thank you. Oh.
Oh. Visit Kuliloklo Coast Miwok Village and Point Reyes National Seashore in Marin County, California, and online at nps.gov/PORE. Our human heritage, thousands of years, living in balance with our Earth. We can do it. Experience, explore, connect. I'm Gina Farr. Thanks for listening. This conversation is a feature of WildSoundStories.com.